All right, Fit Family Podcast, my second fitness podcast entitled, What If There Were a Fitness Formula That Guaranteed Success? Let me open with that premise. What if there was a fitness formula that guaranteed success? I think you would call BS and push back on a couple of different points. First of all, you'd say, hey, Rob, if there was such a formula, you would sell it for millions of dollars. Well, I did. And you'd also say, well, how can you guarantee success? Let me pick up on that second point later. But first of all, when I started in the industry 30 years ago, it was in a management capacity. I managed, gyms for people, chains like Australian Body Works and Crunch Fitness back when it was corporate owned. And I switched from that to the personal training area when I found out how profitable it was. I actually did that by accident. I was managing a few trainers in one of my facilities, and they were telling me, hey, we're getting $100 a session, and we get to train our way. And I'm like, that really appealed to me. So I was training 6, 8, 10 hours a day at $100 a session back then. And this is almost 30 years ago when the only people that trained drove Bentleys and Ferraris. Then as fitness training became more mainstream, I would say that the price came down because as more people get into the profession, it waters it down, but it actually, a rising tide lifts all boats. More people were able to train. I had people that were teachers and firefighters and cops and, not just attorneys and doctors and people that, necessarily make a larger income. At 50 to 60 a session, it's more affordable to the masses, and I love that even more. Personal training doesn't have to be rare to be effective. And yes, over the 30-year career, you think about the fact that if I made a couple of $1 million, it's only an average of $67,000 a year. So trust me, fitness has been very, very good to me. And I've had all sorts of odd jobs in the meantime. Sometimes when training was one of those things where it was hard to collect fees and personal training wasn't something that was backed by the club. I was an independent contractor. Gosh, I waited tables. Even when I met my wife over 26 years ago, I was actually working at a brewery in Anheuser-Busch in Cartersville. And I was working there 3 days and training 3 days because I didn't want training to be my only source of income. So why can I guarantee the formula? The formula for fitness has been around my entire career, and it's always revolved around 3 components: training, weight training, and that can be with your body weight; aerobic conditioning, which can be as simple as walking; and proper and balanced nutrition. And that's going to vary per individual. But let me tell you, that formula, I can definitely guarantee success. We just finished a pandemic a couple of years ago, and they rolled out vaccines to help people overcome the pandemic. Well, guess what? Some people did not take the vaccines. And I think for those people, whether it be for political reasons or personal reasons, who didn't take the vaccines, I think they suffered for that. I think their families suffered for that. And sometimes it was a fatal decisions. And if you were to Google, do vaccines work? The answer is simply yes, they do work. Now, does that mean you didn't get COVID? Does that mean all vaccines work against all diseases? No, it's not 100%. And in the case of COVID, people that got COVID when they were on the vaccine, maybe it lessened the effects. Maybe it wasn't fatal at that point. And then it became common to where now people I get a COVID shot and a flu shot every year. And if I get COVID, it mimics a lot of the flu symptoms. And unless I test for it, I wouldn't know if I had COVID or if I had the flu. But exercise, weight training, cardiovascular, and proper and balanced nutrition is the vaccine for life. If you want to add years to your life and life to your years, those 3 fitness components need to be a part of your life. And I can prove it. Again, I love the Google machine because, again, you can have your own opinions. You cannot have your own facts. So if you Google, does improving your health and fitness decrease morbidity? In other words, the rate of disease occurrence. You will find, if you Google that, it will say people with higher fitness levels are less likely to develop chronic diseases and experience illness in compared to those with lower fitness levels. Bottom line, regular physical activity is the key factor in reducing morbidity across various health conditions. Let me repeat that because that is straight from the Google machine. Regular physical activity is the key factor in reducing morbidity across various health conditions. The way I would put it, regular exercise and proper and balanced nutrition is the fountain of youth. It is the key to enjoying life better. It is the key to living a longer, healthier life. And let me tell you, that's something you want. And that's not my opinion. As I just showed you, those are Googleable facts. Googleable. I like that I just invented that word. So anyway, now you have an intro to my facts, okay? I've proved it in different ways to different groups of people. Let me give an example. I have two boys that are 6 years apart. Now, remember when my oldest son was 12 and my younger son was 6, I had to communicate things in different ways. You know, there are things that a 12-year-old understands that a 6-year-old doesn't understand. And throughout their life, I've had to change the messaging until now. One is 18, one is 24, and they can pretty much adjust to the same message coming from, their parents. It doesn't have to be adjusted. But fitness does. And let me tell you how I do that. When I went back to Williamsburg, Virginia to speak at a school that I went to growing up, it is a school called Walsingham Academy. It's still in Williamsburg, Virginia. They have what's called a lower school and an upper school. Lower school is kindergarten through 6th grade. Upper school is 7th through 12th. I may have had 1 year off, like kindergarten through 7th grade, and then the upper school, 8th through 12th. But they have two schools going from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I was actually brought back to Williamsburg as a distinguished knucklehead and something. I think I'd taken the team to the state championship or something when I was in high school. So I was getting some honor at one of the half times. And he said, would you like to speak to the student body? Because at the time I was touring with CNN and they thought that was a big deal. And I said, I would love to speak to the students. So in addition to speaking to 600 high school kids in the round, which I'll get to later, they also gave me the opportunity to speak to the lower school. So again, it was a few hundred students in an auditorium. And this is how I communicated setting fitness goals. I had a ring toss. If you've ever seen those little ring toss where you have a thing on the ground and you toss rings and try to get certain points by putting it on certain spikes on the ring toss, I had that on the stage and I brought up a couple of kids, which is my MO. I always try to bring up a girl and a boy. And I gave them each 3 rings, but I took the base of the ring toss and put it behind my back. And I got about 10 feet away from them. I said, okay, now I want you two to throw your rings toward the target. And they both sort of looked at me because the target was behind my back. And I said, throw the rings toward the target if you would. And they got kind of nervous, so they just threw the rings onto the stage. And I asked the audience, the teachers, and the other students, why couldn't they hit the target? And they were all like, it was behind your back. It was behind my back. They had no chance of hitting that target because I didn't set it down. So I gave them each the 3 rings back. I sat the target on the ground and I said, okay, now toss the rings toward the target. And I think one of them made like one of the spikes on the target. But the point is they both had an opportunity to hit the target because the target was set. You cannot hit a target you do not set. That goes for your job. That goes for what you want to accomplish in your family. And that definitely applied to that ring toss game. And even the kids at that age could understand that. I'll get to later what I talked about to the high school. But you have to understand, unless you have 2 things, you have to have a goal and a vision when it comes to fitness. And sometimes it has to be adjusted. I love when people come to me. I love the first meeting of a potential client for training. And I remember, toward the beginning of the year, every year I have clients come in, they're so excited and they're like, Robert, I'm gonna work out every day and I'm gonna eat so much better. And I go, you know what? You're not. And I just take all the air out of their balloon. And they go, well, what do you mean? I go, I'm a professional trainer and I don't work out every day. Sooner or later, life will get in your way. Sooner or later, your kid's going to be sick. Sooner or later, you're not going to feel well. Sooner or later, your job's going to call you and go, hey, we need all hands on deck for this project. And if you're like me, you're in the sandwich generation. You have kids and you have older people live with you. Our mother-in-law lives with us in addition to our boys. And she's 80 years old. And not that my mother-in-law is dependent on us, but if she had an emergency, of course, we would drop everything to handle whatever emergency she had. And the same thing with the boys. So there are going to be times when life does not enable you to exercise and eat better. You're just going to grab something out of vending machines as you're waiting in the reception area of the hospital to see, what type of news, whether it's as simple as, your kids being sick, or it's as serious as my mother-in-law one time. She actually had a heart episode. She had a heart attack. And thank goodness she survived it. But of course, we had to block off a lot of time as a family for grandma at that time. And she's still with us and still a member of our family. But if she ever had another health emergency, we would definitely be there for her as a family. I used to always do these corporate presentations. I never turn down a speaking engagement, almost never, unless I just can't get it on my schedule. From schools to Rotary. And this was a corporate event with maybe 80 people in attendance. And I love corporate events because, they're kind of stuffy and it's hard for me to sort of break the ice. So this is how I communicate to a corporate setting. I would have this stainless steel briefcase, and it looked like something that, someone would have handcuffed to their wrist in a movie, something where you carry something very important. And I would put my books in the briefcase, and I'd put this fake $1 million bill that I used to give to clients years ago to have them put on their vanity or on their refrigerator to let them know how valuable I thought they should take their health, that their health was worth millions, and that every time they go to the refrigerator, every time they look in the mirror, even if they didn't like what they saw, their health was worth millions, and they should always make decisions based on that. So I put my books and that fake $1 million bill on top, and I close it up. And normally I'd ask for a volunteer, and they usually always pick the boss or the CEO to come up. And of course, they're sitting up on stage, and I go, okay, I'm going to open up this case, and I kind of crack it open to where, only the person on stage can see it. And I ask them a simple question. Is there $1 million in here? Yes or no? And I make them say yes or no, so they don't say it's a stack of books with a fake $1 million bill on top. So he kind of smiles. He goes, yes, there's $1 million. And I close the case. And I said, okay, you now have this $1 million, but it's a package deal. With this $1 million, you now unfortunately package that with a terminal illness that there's no cure for, and you've got to get your affairs in order because you're not going to be around much longer. And that may not be your first $1 million, but do you want to add that $1 million to your bank account knowing that it comes with a fatal disease? Or would you just say, you know what, I can do without the $1 million, and I can do without the fatal disease? And of course he goes, I would not take the $1 million because I would not want the disease that was fatal. And I've done versions of that to different audiences throughout the years. And I've never had someone go, you know what, I always wanted to die a millionaire. So yeah, I take the $1 million in the terminal disease. I've never had someone seriously take that. I have had some presentations at schools where some kids have given some unique answers, but never an adult, never seriously would take a terminal illness along with that $1 million. That is how I prove how valuable your health is. I've even searched how much open heart surgery is, how much a liver transplant is, if you can find someone is compatible and that would give you, parts of their liver, or a kidney transplant. And I know of a person who actually trains with me who did a kidney transplant. And it was so cool. He showed me his kidney. He goes, it packaged up, and they take it with the entire team, and they fly the entire team to the surgical site. And it was really a fascinating process. And he did it for a relative, but I have read about stories where people give away kidneys to strangers. And I can imagine if someone had the means and they could pay them millions of dollars, I'm sure they would for that second lease on life. So folks, it just lets you know how valuable your health is. Because if I can't convince you of that, then let's face it, I'm not going to be able to help you. I love the Anthony Robbins quote about, commitment in the corporate setting. He goes, if you want to commit to getting off the island, burn the effing lifeboats. In other words, commit to a course of action, commit to the plan, and don't have a plan B or a plan C. Make sure that plan A works. And in the corporate environment, that works really well for corporations because they want to get you on board with what they want to do. Well, my corporate environment is fitness, and I want to get you on board with strength training, cardiovascular, and proper nutrition. Now, with that, you have to have a way to structure it, okay? So let's talk about the goal, the first part, the goal and the vision. The reason I can guarantee fitness results is because it can be measured. If someone comes to me and go, I want tighter abs, or I want a firmer backside, or I want, my arms to be toned for the gun show, I can actually do circumference measurements. I can do weight and body fat. I can do resting and accelerated heart rate. I can do measurements to show them over a 6 to 8 week period that I'm moving the metrics on their physical health. Your circumference measurements go down, even though your weight may actually go up. Your body fat goes down. Your resting heart rate goes down. Your energy goes up. These are things that you can feel and that I can show through metrics that I'm getting you results. The second thing is time. Folks, let me tell you, one workout's not going to make you fit. I used to hate when people used to come in I used to always promote a free workout session, and people would come in and go, okay, well, that was kind of interesting. And they kind of move on about their business and they wouldn't make a commitment because they thought, now I have some of the answers and I'll go to a Orange Theory, I'll go to some public gym and I'll get a couple other answers and I'll get a $10 a month membership somewhere and I'll figure it out. Well, how has that worked out for you so far? Okay? Because most people are in shape when they play a sport in high school. Maybe they played a sport in college. Maybe they get out and they continue to play. I know in Atlanta, they have the Atlanta Lawn Tennis Association, ALTA, and a lot of people continue their tennis. Some people get involved in road races. But let's face it, let's say you're not an athlete. Let's say you're not prone to joining ALTA or running road races. How do you stay fit? Who's holding you accountable? And how has that worked for you? I've been the same weight since the mid-'80s. Let me repeat that. I've been the same weight since the mid-'80s. My wife and I have been married over 26 years. I'm the same weight now as when we got married. And I'm not bragging necessarily on myself. I'm bragging on the process to prove that it works. Okay? Can you say you're in the same physical shape that you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Other than the tensile strength of my tendons, I can. I mean, I have an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old. I'm still in better shape than both of them. Now, my 18-year-old, I guarantee you, he's got the best physique in the family. And how he does that, ordering cookies at 1 in the morning, I don't know. But that's 17 and 18-year-old metabolism is unbelievable. But I'm still stronger than he is currently. And it's because I weigh more and I've been doing this a hot minute. My point, folks, is how's it working for you now? When you look in the mirror, when you wake up, how do you look? How's your energy? If you're one of those people that go, Rob, I look fantastic. My energy is unbelievable. Then maybe my services are not for you. Maybe someone like me is not for you. Maybe you figured it out. But you know what I can tell? I can tell through the ongoing obesity epidemic, the fact that people are turning to Ozempic and all these other ridiculous drugs to try to lose weight. It seems like every year there's another knucklehead thing that they put out there to help people lose weight. I remember years ago it was Fin, and it had to start killing people before people decided, oh, well, maybe this isn't the way to go. Maybe I'll listen to that trainer that I see on TV all the time, that Robert Dothard, and he talks about exercise and proper and balanced nutrition. That's right. If you search my name on YouTube, you'll get videos going back to when I had a fro. And that's how long I've been preaching this message. And guess what? It's been working exactly that long. So we've got the goal and the vision. We've got the time toward training, the time toward cardiovascular conditioning. And it can be walking. Now, again, I can take grades of that. So when people come in for training, say they come in twice a week, in between appointments, I go, hey, were you able to get any cardio in? Well, I walked the dog. Okay, well, that'd be good for an initial start. After a while, I'm going to go, hey, leave the dog at home. I want you to go on a committed 20 to 30-minute walk without having to stop every time your dog wants to sniff or relieve itself. And then I want you to spend time thinking about what you're going to eat and not just grabbing the most convenient thing for lunch and on the way home for dinner. Maybe you're in an environment where, you sit down to a formal dinner at home and you have that advantage. Well, what about lunch? You may have a cafeteria where they don't give you good options. Well, maybe you have to bring your own lunch, even though there's a cafeteria. Maybe you get a side salad or a beverage or something like that to complement what you bring. But the point is, fast food is just that. It's fast and it's unhealthy. Now, do I eat it sometimes? Yes. I'll grab a sub for lunch. I'll sometimes go to a burrito place and do a burrito in a bowl and do lettuce and tomato and beans and rice and make it as healthy as I can. And yes, it's fast for me. I get a big break in the afternoon, so I'm not confined to sitting at my desk. But folks, you have to figure out what works for you, but you have to take time to start thinking about what you're putting in your body as fuel and not just going, I'm going to shove something in my face so I'm not hungry. And then finally, resources. Good food's going to cost more, okay? It costs more to shop at Whole Foods. It costs more to buy food. It costs time to prepare it. So resources. And don't just stop at food. I often tell people, look, if you're not able to get into my studio or if you're far enough away where training with me in person is not possible, I can always train you virtually. And a lot of my clients can equip their home for just a few $100s of small equipment, a ball, tubing, light dumbbells. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on fitness equipment. And if you're the type of person that's going, hey, Rob, I'm not the type of person who can afford a few $100s. Well, then maybe you're not in the market for me or someone like me. But guess what? If you email me, I'll send you my book. I'll try to help you. But I can't care about your health more than you care about your health. I've had clients buy new cars and stop my training. I've had clients that, it's funny. They don't think I'm listening to them when they're talking. They're like, oh, well, Robert, we may have to cut back on the training. We're trying to tighten up the budget. And of course, they would tell me about the 3 or 4 times that week they've gone out to dinner. Maybe they're entertaining clients. Maybe they can write it off. But, I'm mentally going, well, wait a second now. If you're going out to eat in the Atlanta metro area, you're gonna drop a couple of bills. You're gonna spend maybe $200, and that's just for a couple. You know what that brings you? That brings you 4 or 5 training sessions. Okay? So again, it's all about priorities, goal and vision, time, and resources. And just like the vaccines, if you don't take it, it's not going to happen. Okay? That's one thing I love about my profession that I brag on all the time. My clients do all the work. I take all the credit. I love that about my job. But no fitness formula will work, no trainer will work, no system will work if it's not implemented. It's funny. I remember back during the video days and people would, buy VHS workouts, and I was actually in some of those. And if you remember Billy Blanks, and he had the Taibo workout, and of course, spinning was very popular. And now they have these classes through Peloton and different, I think Nordic Track has the same type of system where you can buy these bikes and get these classes programmed in, and they're not cheap. They're like $400 or $500 a year to get this programming brought into your house. But I love it. I love the fact that Peloton was Johnny on the spot during the pandemic, and I'm hoping they make it. Every time I read something about them, they're usually in trouble financially, but they present a great product. And again, they're not taking clients away from me. A lot of my clients have a Peloton system in their home, and it does nothing but help me help them. So I love systems like that because they give you the instruction as well as the equipment. And a lot of times it's just a matter of adding nutrition on top of that. And I've talked about nutrition several times, and I don't try to make myself something that I'm not. I'm not a registered dietitian. I do recommend, if you have the resources, that you can do prepared meals or consult with a registered dietitian, or you have the time and you know your way around the kitchen and you can make those changes for yourself. I recommend you do so. I'm a front of the house guy. I mean, my wife has made sure both of my boys know their way around the kitchen, and they're both excellent cooks. And so if there are people out there that are wondering if your kids should learn how to cook, I definitely think they should. It definitely brings a lot to our family. I can cook. I just don't like to cook. It's another job for me. I don't need another job. Okay. I like being served. I like healthy food being at my fingertips, and I don't like spending hours to prepare it. So that's just me. But I'm willing to spend resources on healthier food and not taking the time to prepare it. So moving on. You'll often see me on social media. If you were to search me on social media, I always say results start when you do, because outside of how much will your training cost, which is an average of $60 a session, I often have people ask me, how long will it take me to get results? And I often tell them, well, when are you going to get to work? In other words, when are you going to sit down with me and give me a goal or a vision of how you want to look, how you want to feel, so you and I can come up with a game plan to help you get there? When are you going to take the time to train with me or someone like me, either in person or virtually? When are you going to take the time to do cardiovascular work? Because the most important muscle is in the center of your chest, your heart. So you'll often hear me talk about cardio. I don't do cardio with my clients, but I always talk about it because it's critical to making my program work. Same thing with food. Okay, if you're not eating a proper and balanced diet, again, I'll give you the basics from my ebook that I'll send you, but I want you to do more than the basics. I want you to get results, and you only get results by eating well and exercising. If you were to sum up my career in one word, it would be accountability. Okay? You have to be held accountable. And with that in mind, I will tell you what I told the high schoolers when I went back to speak at my high school. It was such an awesome experience. I hadn't been back to Walsingham in over 30 years. And I was actually in the auditorium that I used to play basketball in. They have since built another auditorium that they play basketball in. This was like a meeting auditorium now. But I played back when basketball players wore satin shorts. I'll let you do the math on that. It is not a pretty picture. But anyway, I had 600 kids in the round. I'm in the middle. And I called two kids up. As I told you, I love getting volunteers as part of my talk. And this is just one segment of my talk. I brought them up. One guy was a big, burly wrestler guy, and another young lady I found out played tennis, but she was obviously smaller than the guy and not as strong. And I asked the guy to grab her by the wrist, and he did. And I asked her to get away, and she couldn't because he was a wrestler. He knew how to grab her. And so I asked him to stay there, and I walked a few feet away from him, and I told her, look, next time he grabs your wrist, I want you to push your arm in the direction of the opening in his fingers, between his thumb and his fingers. So when they came back, he grabbed her. She slipped right out. And I said, come on, buddy, you're a strong guy. Don't let her out. And he grabbed her. You could hear it. It was like locking on. And then she slipped right out. And I said, what happened here? And I asked all the kids and they were like, oh, you taught her a trick. And I said, be more specific. Oh, there was something, you did. And I was like, okay, let's narrow it down. I gave her a piece of information. I basically taught her a wrist escape. And I could have added to that wrist escape to bring her other hand up and to make a fist and to grab her fist and use two arms against his grip. And he would not be able to hold her because it would be her arm strength against his fingers. And if you ever learn about a wrist escape, you will learn that if you go with the hand, in other words, if I tried to hold someone and they push toward the palm of my hand, I wouldn't even have to clasp my fingers to hold them. And it would be pretty easy. But if they go away, and especially if they bring their other hand up, I'm going to have to bring my other hand up to keep that hand from going out. Now, when that happens, I'm actually defending against them getting out. So they are now the attacker because they're getting released from the grip and then they can strike and get away. So I gave them information and I said, before this presentation, many of you didn't even know my name other than something on the program. And I just gave you a piece of information. And the cool thing about information, just like the information I'm giving the people that are listening to this podcast, you can use it immediately and forever. And although I verbally described a wrist escape, if I were to teach you a wrist escape, no one could ever grab your wrist and detain you. In other words, no one could subdue you by grabbing your wrist. It's a piece of information you could use the rest of your life. And I told the high school students in attendance, I said, what about the people that you do know? What about your teachers, your coaches, your parents, your friends, your real friends, the ones that want to see you succeed and do well? If you don't check out in life through drugs, through alcohol, through apathy, if you stay in tune and start taking the advice from people that do presentations at your school like me, your teachers who are pouring into you every day, your coaches who are pouring into you every day, the information they give you, just like your friends who you're probably meeting with every day at some point, all the information you can use immediately and forever. And that is critical. That is critical to success because basically, what is college? It's more information. And I'm not saying traditional college is the answer. What if you go to trade school? What if you become a plumber, a mechanic, which, by the way, awesome professions, okay? Half the hockey dads in my hockey program had manual jobs. And let me tell you, they flew first class. They flew a lot better than the fitness boy, let me tell you. But let me tell you, it's important that you don't check out. So when it comes to your health and fitness, if you don't like me, find someone like me. Find a nationally certified trainer to hold you accountable, to sit down with you, to come up with a game plan, to make sure you block off time, to make sure you're pouring resources into your health. Because let me tell you, you can pour resources into your health or you will pour resources into being unhealthy. The choice is yours. My prayer is you'll pour resources into being healthy. And I'm going to show you 2 ways to do that on the next podcast. I'm going to talk about form and function because normally when people come to train with me, they either want to look better and feel better or they want to be able to function better. In other words, I want to be able to take my grandkids out or compete in tennis against my kids or be able to go for a walk and not throw my back out or go for a hike and not be the first one to give out. They want to enjoy life more. They want to be able to go on that ski trip or that hiking or camping excursion without thinking, that may not be a good idea. Or they want to look and feel better. They don't want to look in the mirror and go, how did I let it get to this? Or they don't want to, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So if you're that person, next week, form and function, I'm going to break it down 2 different ways. But my prayer is either keep listening to me or find someone like me and start improving your health today. If you're listening to this podcast early in the morning, make sure exercise is part of your life. Make sure every time you put food in your mouth, you're thinking, is this beneficial? Is this healthy? Or am I just shoving something in my face so I'm not hungry? Those are the type of questions you need to ask, and I would love to continue to help you. Part 3 is coming next week. Until then, I hope you stay blessed, and I hope you start toward a healthy and fit lifestyle. Thank you for your time.